Welcome to the Modise Network. The Secretary-General of the African National Congress, Mr. Ace Magashule, says he's considering legal action against journalist Pieter Louis Myburgh for publishing a damning book about him. The book is titled Gangster State, Unravelling Ace Magashule's Web of Capture. In the book, Myburgh provides details of how a vast network of capture operated in the Free State province under the former Premier Magashule. He alleges criminal activities that diverted public funds for community projects and possible subversion of investigations by the police themselves. The ANC seems to be confused in its response to the contents of the book. First, it slammed the Sunday newspaper reports, then promised to retract its statement, and later said that statement will stand. All this is damaging to the ANC because of the stature and role of the Secretary-General in the running of the organization and the running of the elections campaign. Pieter Louis Myburgh will join me shortly to discuss the book, and he'll be followed by Professor Gupta to talk about the potential fallout from these developments. Later, I'll be joined by Dr. Pieter Louis, former Statistician General. He's currently Research Associate at Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative. He'll be talking to us about the global efforts to mobilize businesses to help reduce poverty. But let's start first with Pieter Louis Myburgh, and he'll be talking about his book, The Gangster State. In his explosive book titled Gangster State, Unravelling the Ace Magashule's Web of Capture, investigative journalist Pieter Louis Myburgh ventured deeper than ever before into Ace Magashule's alleged dodgy dealings, from his time as a struggle activist in the 1980s to his powerful role as Premier of the Free State province for nearly a decade, and his rise to one of the ANC's most influential positions. In this book, we are taken between Magashule, the Hawks, and the SAPS. He joins me now in studio to talk more about the book, and I'm welcoming to the studio Pieter Louis Myburgh. Pleasure to have you with us, Pieter Louis.
Thanks for having me.
And also let me remind our viewers that you can be part of this conversation on Twitter, and the hashtag is the Modise Network. Now, Pieter Louis, obviously, after the story broke on Sunday that the book was coming out and the articles carried by Sunday newspapers, the ANC issued a very strident and very angry statement against you. What was your reaction to it when you read that?
I was somewhat disappointed. I think here's an opportunity to really grapple with some very troubling indications of malfeasance, poor governance, and possibly corruption. The book is detailed, it's well researched. Instead of making any attempt to delve into the issues unpacked in the book, the ANC goes and fires off a pure ad hominem attack on the author, on the publisher, on the newspapers who ran some of the excerpts and who carried some of the news stories based on the book, and there's just no attempt whatsoever by the ANC to at least tackle the issues raised in the book. So it's becoming a very troubling trend for the ANC. Each and every time it is caught with its ankles on its pants, or one of its senior leaders are found to have been implicated in some corruption scandal, it resorts to an attack on the publication, and we never get to deal with the issues at hand.
Well, Ace Magashule, also goes on to say that he regards this to be an orchestrated attempt to besmirch his name and undermine the ANC's election efforts, election campaign, right? So I will look at how you went about investigating this, but what is your response to his view that it is an orchestrated campaign against both himself and the ANC?
Yeah, look, so Ace Magashule is an individual who, as I unpack in the book, really requires no orchestrated attempt to besmirch his own name. He's very adept at doing that all by himself. Over the years, this book is not the first indication of major scandals involving Ace Magashule's corruption. I mean, we can go back to 1996, when then Free State Premier Monsieur Lekota fired Ace Magashule as the MEC in the province. He was the MEC of Economic Development for being involved in alleged corrupt dealings in the Free State. And then that was just the start of Ace Magashule's very long and sad history as a ostensibly corrupt government leader. So certainly, you know, there's no orchestrated attempt to besmirch anybody's name. This is a case of a journalist and a researcher holding to account a very powerful figure in South Africa and raising real public interest concerns around this person, especially in light of the fact that we are dealing with taxpayers' money and we are dealing with contracts that are supposed to benefit the poorest of the poor in South Africa. RDP projects, failed agriculture projects, and time again, Mr. Magashule is involved in these issues.
But somehow he rose to the top. I mean, what is the influence based on then? If he has been involved in wrongdoing and malfeasance for as long as going back to 1996?
Yeah, so Tim, I think that's a very important question to ask because, and I write this in the introduction of the book, this is at once a book about Ace Magashule and simultaneously also about the ANC, the parties he leads, or of which is now the SG, because as early as, the mid-1990s, senior ANC leaders like Nelson Mandela, later Thabo Mbeki, raised concerns within the party structures that Ace Magashule was not the man to lead the Free State because of the fact that there were early indications that he couldn't be trusted with money. That's why you had the situation where time and time again, you had your Winky de Rekos, you had your Beatrice Marshoffs, earlier Monsieur Lakota, who instead got the go-ahead to go and lead the Free State on the executive level in the province, while Magashule was the chairperson of the ANC itself in the province. So there's a very long history of the ANC, at least its very top leaders raising concerns about Magashule, and the fact that he was later on, in the Jacob Zuma era of his comeuppance or his rise to power, post-Polokwane 2007, the fact that then he gets appointed to being premier, I think says more about Jacob Zuma also, and the ANC in general, especially subsequently its failure to deal with disciplinary issues involving Ace Magashule.
Well, to the best of your ability, you investigated this and gathered as much information, but I want to know how you approached it, because, you would not have been privy to some of the stuff that you share with us in the book, right? If you did not have people within the ANC itself sharing some information with you, right? But for you personally, what was the interest about? What made you go out on this mission to go and establish the facts about the province-wide web of capture? It's province or is it national?
Yeah. Look, so I think this book has absolutely got national implications because, state capture and corruption, we now see there are these sort of cases of cross-pollination involving contractors from KZN linked to Jacob Zuma, guys from the Free State, people from Gauteng. So it certainly points to, intricate networks of cooperation between state captors and, allegedly corrupt business people. Just want to go back to addressing why I look at this book, and it also sort of speaks to this whole issue about the timing of the book and this supposed orchestrated attempt to discredit the party shortly before the elections. I've been researching and reporting on Mr. Ace Magashule for quite a couple of years, definitely well in advance of the current election cycle having kicked off. Anybody who's got access to Google can go and research my work on News 24. I've been digging into contracts channeled to his daughter, other sorts of dodgy dealings with the Free State Development Corporation benefiting his daughter. So I think the book is really a result of a prolonged interest in a man who is tasked with and entrusted with leading a province and now a party to an extent, who clearly on many levels has not only failed his own party but also the public in general.
Well, I mean, there are so many things that you say in the book, right, about the wrongdoing on his part or the alleged wrongdoing on his part. Another question would be, why did the criminal justice not pursue some of these allegations, the police in particular? I mean, did he have influence over that? I know to some extent you provide some of the detail, and you also tell of the incident where a businessman was killed, was assassinated in Sandton, and you make some linkages there. If you can tell me a bit more about that.
Definitely, Tim. I think that question is pertinent to, or is relevant to all the large-scale corruption we are seeing unfolding in this country involving senior politicians. So in around 2009, we know the sad history. The Scorpions were disbanded. They were, at least to a very large extent, better equipped and better tasked with properly researching and probing high-level corruption. So they were disbanded, and then the Hawks were put in their place. And then in subsequent years, and I've got sources telling me this on the ground, that time and time and again, complaints are lodged at police stations with the Hawks in the Free State, involving matters around issues like Estina Dairy Farm and so on. And there would be no progress made by the Hawks to properly investigate this and independently assess whether there should be criminal prosecutions. And one could say the same with the NPA, I suppose. Only recently do we have a new NPA head who at least is making the right noises in terms of being an independent and fearless prosecuting body. So only time will tell if they will remain committed to these promises.
Well, a couple of years ago, or a year or two ago, you published the book, The Republic of Gupta, and now there's a follow-up book, The Gangster State, and the same people feature once again in The Gangster State, Unravelling Ace Magashule's web of capture. What role do they play? Is it a minor one, or it's still a substantial role?
Yeah, I think that definitely ties to sort of this phenomenon of corruption having become this kind of like intricate sort of countrywide phenomenon, especially, that concerning the large deals and the most lucrative contracts. So the Gupta family, Ace Magashule has had a very long-standing connection with the Gupta family, which more or less it doesn't predate Jacob Zuma's ties with the family, but it certainly has been in place for quite a couple of years. We see quite early on his sons get absorbed into the Gupta business empire, just as Durizani Zuma had been absorbed into some of their companies, and then subsequently, of course, we know that the Estina Dairy project, some controversial medical bus contracts were rolled out in the Free State, and of course the New Age newspaper had some of its earliest business successes in the Free State when some of the government departments in the Free State started subscribing to the New Age on quite large scale before the Escoms and Transnet started getting into those subscriptions. But I think most concerningly is the fact that I could now sort of point to the fact that Magashule, by all appearances, was an active aider and abetter of the Gupta capture network. I tell the story of Bloemfontein Mayor Thabo Manyoni, who gets taken to the Gupta compound by Ace Magashule one day, and at the compound, Atul Gupta makes all these very disturbing suggestions in terms of what would happen next in Jacob Zuma's cabinet. So Ace Magashule was to become the new National Minister of Communications, and Thabo Manyoni was to be appointed as the Premier of the Free State in his place, and so he needed to be vetted by the Guptas, as it were.
What is the lowest that you came across? There are allegations of corruption. There are many instances of it that you came across, right? But the one that disturbed you the most when you were doing your investigations, where you felt that, people can never sink to that level.
Yeah. Look, I think the contract you mentioned earlier involving Igor Mpambani, the gentleman who was shot dead in Sandton in June 2017, is quite disturbing because, firstly, there's a body on the ground here. We can't necessarily say it's connected to this contract, but the timing of his death will remain suspicious until the police can do a proper investigation. So that contract was a 255 million rand asbestos audit deal awarded to Mr. Mpambani and one of his business partners, and they went into the Free State and assessed or audited or basically counted 300,000 houses with asbestos roofs. So all indications are that the Free State, the relevant municipalities and the National Department of Human Settlements had that information in their possession already. In other words, they are planning building plans and municipal plans that already showed where the asbestos roofs are. So it very much appears like 255 million rand was channeled to a bunch of connected business people, and there might not have been a need for that. So I think the rampant looting and the scale of the theft, once again, does remain staggering and most concerning, especially from a taxpayer's perspective.
At a personal level, and the book is going to be launched on Tuesday, right? A few days from now. But there are people who've already reacted to the reports in a very negative way, whereas a good number, a substantial majority, appreciates the work that you do and the risk that you place on your life. But have you been threatened and bullied in any way?
Look, with some of my previous work, that does happen, sort of broadly speaking, when I started looking at process malfeasance and some of those locomotive contracts, there were threats made. In this instance, it was actually surprisingly quiet. One just tends to remain vigilant, and if you do your source interviews and you go to meet whistleblowers, it's always very important just to remain vigilant and aware of your surroundings and your safety.
A quick question and brief response from you. Threats of legal action against you. Is there any part of the book that you think will have to be expunged as a result of the threatened legal action against you?
Not a single word. Now, the book is the result of a year-long extensive and close research process. It's been legally vetted by the best media lawyers in the country, and we would welcome actually the book being challenged by a court of law, because that of course also affords one an opportunity to extract further information from the opposing party.
Pieter Louis Myburgh, thank you very much for paying us a visit and talking to us.
Thank you.
And Pieter Louis Myburgh is author of the book Gangster State, Unravelling Ace Magashule's Web of Capture. And the book is going to be launched on the 9th of this month, April. After the break, we continue our conversation on the ANC's reaction to the book and a range of other political issues taking place in our country. And I'll be talking to Professor Mcebisi Ndlechana to provide us with more analysis. Don't forget to share your comments, and the hashtag is the Modise Network.